When I'm meeting new people, which for a shy person is hard work, my default is to ask questions. It's a lot easier than having to say small talk, which I'm not great at. The obvious question with a new person is that easy question, so what do you do? And most people answer, which is interesting, with the kind of job they do. And that's helpful, unless they work in the oil industry, because whatever they say, whatever they tell me their job title is, no one, as far as I can work out, even sometimes people in their own family, really have any idea what it is they actually do. It's not a bad question, so what do you do? But it could be argued that just using that kind of question, or assuming that a person's defined by their job, is a lazy way to think about identity. And of course, people don't have to answer by saying what their job is. They could answer that they breathe, or they love, or they eat, or they like to do looking after their family, or they could say they like to play Lego or football, or that they're into music. If I was asked that kind of thing, I would list some of the activities I love to do, like going snowboarding. So far this year, there hasn't been enough snow to do that kind of thing, which is sad. Sometimes lazily, people hear a thing like that and they group you into a kind of person who likes a particular kind of thing, extreme sports. So snowboarding means you're a skateboarder, a surfer. I have tried some of these things, but I've not hit on each one of them in the same way. For a while, when I was younger, I did have a surfboard, and I would listen out for the wave reports, and then I would drive all the way down to the beach, and then I'd muck about for a while in the waves. Makes me think a little bit about the comedian Billy Connolly. He has a famous way he talks about the sea, and about how it's ridiculous that folks should want to spend time on the beach or in the water when there are so many things in there that are trying to kill us and get rid of us and attack us as human beings, and we should just stay away from it. It's not an uncommon fear of the sea. And working in this community where so many people work in the oil and the offshore industry, have a healthy suspicion of the power, the chaos, the lack of control we have, and we hear news reports of tsunamis and the terrible tragedies, and that doesn't help. When I was experimenting a little bit with surfing, I'm not a strong swimmer, and ending up out beyond the waves and struggling a little bit to get back a few times just made me more and more nervous. And I never came to any harm, but it just wasn't for me. I didn't persevere. I'd much rather, with the snowboarding, be on a mountain that doesn't move around too much, and snow that I kind of sort of roughly see and know where it is. That fear of water is part of humanity's story. It was no different for the Jewish people in the first century, and actually throughout their history. They had a suspicion of something known as the deep. And right from the start of their story, and collected for us in this book we call the Bible, this collection of books, right at the start in a poem called Genesis, the forces of chaos are described as the deep, the water, and the images of a God who brings order from that chaos. And then that image comes time and time again in their songs, in the songbook in the middle of this collection called the Psalms. They would sing, they would write poems about a creator God who ruled over the surging sea, who would still the waters of chaos. In their books of prophets, like Isaiah, they would talk about God who could control the monsters of the deep, and sometimes they had names. And then when their God hears their cry in a story about the Exodus and frees them from slavery following a man called Moses, one of the obstacles is a sea, and God there controls the waters and lets them cross to freedom on dry land. Some of their prophets, a guy called Elijah, is known for telling people and demonstrating that their God can control the waters of chaos. So then, in the stories we have about a man called Jesus of Nazareth, one of the collectors of this material, a man we call Luke, has Jesus of Nazareth as one of his stories gaining a reputation and wandering around the villages in the north, and then getting in a boat to cross a body of water that was known as Lake Gennesaret, or also the Sea of Galilee, although it wasn't technically a sea. He's been on the Jewish area, and now he's actually going to cross over for a little bit to the non-Jewish, the Gentile side. So they set out on the boat, and he and the people with him, presumably the people he's chosen to spend a lot of time with, are sleeping. But then this lake is in a valley, and it wasn't unusual for high winds to cause bad weather in this valley, and storms were actually common. And this one seems to be extreme. And the people with Jesus in the boat wake up and they panic, and then they wake him up and they ask him to do something. I mean, some of them are actually fishermen themselves, used to being on boats, but they are panicking. They're worried actually for their lives. Jesus' response to this danger is actually very short and very quick. And Luke describes it in that way. He wakes up, he sets things straight, and the raging waters, the storm, subside. From his words come order from chaos. And that sounds really familiar, particularly to any Jewish listeners of this story. They would be reminded that their God is a God who brings order from chaos. And even if they're listening and they're not Jewish, they're part of the Greek and the Roman Empire of the time, they would also recognize in their stories of gods that gods controlled the raging waters. Here's a story of Jesus facing the storm and bringing order from chaos, bringing calm. And then he has a question for these people he's chosen to spend all this time with. His question is, where is your faith? And when he uses that word faith, he doesn't mean, what do you believe about this? The word faith there that we translate faith has much more of the weight of actually trust. Where's your trust? In these stories, faith isn't about holding an idea about who a person is. It's about what you put your trust in. It's about your actions. It's about what you do. You don't put your faith in an idea or even in a set of facts. You put your faith in a person, in a boat, in a structure, in a way of living. His followers are presumably just incredibly grateful to be alive. But the reaction is also described as fear. Fear and amazement. Now, fear, again, this word has a bit more of the sense of awe and respect. They're not afraid of the storm anymore. They're not afraid for their lives anymore, but they are, in a different way, differently respectful of this man. And just like he had a question for them, where's your faith? Where's your trust? They have a question for him or each other. Who is this man? And that's one of Luke's themes that come back and in and out of his stories. It lets him ask these questions. Where is your faith? Where is your trust? And also, as Jesus reveals in what he does more about who he is and more about God, the God that they know so much about they think. The question is, well, who is this man? A man who commands even the waters of chaos. What stories like this reveal is that this man is certainly more than just a good teacher. More than just an inspirational leader with wonderful ways with words. Luke, I believe, wants us to know that this is God at work. God in action. The same God who hears the cry. The God who can be trusted in any storm. The God who's always working to bring order from chaos. The God who deserves his children, his people, to put their faith in him and to respond. Because just as this is revealed and this makes us ask the question, who is this man? I wonder if at the same time the same God who's being revealed is asking us. So hearing this, so feeling this, so seeing this, what do you do?